And now for a deeper look at President I재명's New Year's message ahead of his trip to China and the direction of the administration's diplomacy in 2026, we're joined today by Professor Ban Kil-joo, assistant professor at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Ban, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hello, good to be with you.
So what stood out to you the most in President Lee's New Year's message?
Well, as a political scientist, I have focused more on the messages related to policies of diplomacy and security, particularly in a situation where the Lee administration initiated pragmatic diplomacy last year. With this in mind, the New Year messages show how the current Rock administration has evaluated its diplomatic and security policies, which were made last year. As expected, President Lee stressed the achievements of the Rock diplomacy with the United States. He defined the ROK-US alliance as the Renaissance relationship by laying out agreed agendas like nuclear power submarines, uranium enrichment, and nuclear fuel reprocessing. Based on recognized achievements made in the last year, President Lee defined 2026 as the year of a major leap forward, particularly on 5 objectives. A stable growth through peace was laid out as one of the 5 objectives. This objective is intended to convert Korea risk to Korea premium. To that end, detailed items are laid out. First of all, mitigating tensions on the Korean Peninsula is proposed as a key task. President Lee also mentioned confidence-building measures and coordination with others such as the United States and China, as well as its role as a pacemaker. Second, he came up with the objective of peaceful coexistence based upon the enhancement of self-help capability and evolving strategic alliance. Third, he is aimed at expanding its diplomatic horizon to the world through the national interest-led pragmatic diplomacy. In a nutshell, his message on diplomacy stood out, which can be summarized as peaceful coexistence, upgraded national prestige, and diplomatic expansion.
Right, like you just mentioned, on North Korea, he says South Korea will continue to act as a pacemaker this year to support talks between Washington and Pyongyang. What's your take on the government's North Korea policy in 2026?
Well, as you may know, last year, South Korea and the United States agreed on the division of labor regarding peace on the Korean Peninsula, with the United States as a peacemaker and South Korea as a pacemaker. Meanwhile, to be honest with you, the year 2026 will be more important than 2025 in terms of South Korea's role as a pacemaker due to 2 drivers. First, an upcoming temporary détente between the United States and China. Second is positive ripple effect on the Korean Peninsula. To start with, the confrontation between the United States and China is expected to be mitigating this year, leading to a tactical level of détente between the 2 countries. To be more specific, in April 2026, U.S. President Trump is scheduled to visit Beijing for the U.S.-China summit, followed by the expected return visit of PRC President Xi Jinping. In addition to this bilateral diplomatic setting, they are more likely to have chances to meet each other in multilateral platforms such as the APEC summit hosted by China and the G20 summit hosted by the United States. A series of diplomatic efforts is likely to encourage great power tensions to ease gradually in 2026. Second, easing tensions on the great power competition could contribute to mitigating tensions on the Korean Peninsula in a situation where Trump-Kim talks are more feasible this year than last year. Beijing serves as an optimal venue for the Trump-Kim meeting in the sense that China is North Korea's longtime ally. If Kim Jong-un were to visit Beijing and successfully have talks with Trump, the trilateral summit between North Korea, the United States, and China could be made as well. The rise of this scenario could contribute to promoting inter-Korean talks at the end of the day. In this process, South Korea's role as a pacemaker will be taken as important in order not to be sidelined, and furthermore, to seize the initiative of diplomacy as a direct actor on the Korean Peninsula. If South Korea is successful with its role as a pacemaker, it should pay more attention to its coordination with a peacemaker, which is the role of the United States. In this vein, South Korea should closely coordinate with the United States prior to U.S.-North Korea talks regarding agenda setting and sharing objectives of the possible meetings. Pretty simply, a pacemaker should be an active player, not a bystander.
Right, absolutely. And President Yi is set to begin his diplomacy this year with a state visit to China, a crucial step for making that inter-Korean relations. He's scheduled to travel to Beijing this week. What does this suggest about South Korea's relations with China?
Well, the pragmatic diplomacy has started with the aim to consolidate right-US alliance in a more sustainable way. This aim seems to be achieved in the sense that the ROC-US alliance modernization has been designed successfully. So the second step of the pragmatic diplomacy seems to put more emphasis on the complete restoration of South Korea-China relations. Since South Korea is aiming at the complete restoration of its relations with China, various agendas could be on the table in the upcoming South Korea-China summit in Beijing, including military exchanges as well as economic and social exchanges. Meanwhile, tricky issues as well as easier agendas should be on the table in an effort to achieve the objectives of pragmatic diplomacy. Some issues like climate response and transnational crime coordination would be relatively easier to talk. However, the establishment of a structure at the West Sea by China, South Korea's nuclear power submarines, and the denuclearization of North Korea would be harder to tackle for both states. What matters is that both easy and tricky issues should be on the table to visualize the expected utilities of the complete restoration of the ROC-PRC relations.
Right, a lot of things to discuss in Beijing. We'll have to keep a close eye on that meeting. All right, Professor Pan, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.